Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. Glad to have you with me today. And today we're going to be talking about the sci-fi dystopian series Aces High, Joker's Wild by O.E. Tearmann. O.E. Tearmann is actually a pen name comprised of two different authors, Olivia Wylie, who was unable to be here at this time, and E.S. Argentum, who is here. E.S., welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Me and my invisible co-writer.
Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And so, first up, as I mentioned, you write under the pen name O.E. Tearmann. Um, how, how did you guys come up with that name? I mean, obviously, there's O for Olivia and
E for
E
yeah.
for ES.
Yeah.
But can you explain the rest for us?
Yeah, so one of the things we wanted was a lot easier to find a single author name than a book that's co-written for the most part. And so we knew we wanted to use one name. Obviously, as you said, the O for Olivia, the E for ES. And then Tearmann is actually Irish for a safe harbor. And we both study the Irish language and we're both big nerds, and we really wanted a meaningful name. And so when we came across Tearmann, it was just kind of perfect because we want our writing to be kind of that safe harbor for marginalized people, for folks who are looking for hope, and it was also kind of a safe harbor for the both of us as well. So it just kind of fit. And also it sounds cool. O.E. Tearmann.
It does. Now, both you and Olivia also have your own, I guess, individual writing careers. Is that right? Okay.
Olivia does a lot of nonfiction and illustrated works, especially in the fields of it sounds weird to call mythology nonfiction, but mythology and botany and the meaning of plants, things of that nature. And I write queer spec fake romance.
Okay, cool. And um, so how did the idea to, I guess, join forces come together?
We met through an Irish speaking group on Meetup that Liv had made, and became friends through that. And then um, around 2016, we were both kind of watching the world kind of feeling like it was going. I forgot to ask, can I curse?
Uh, I'll give you one. I try to keep it
Okay.
PG-13.
It was going to HE double hockey sticks. I don't know what
Oh,
counts as
that's
PG.
fine.
It was going to hell. The world was going to hell. And we were both like, okay, well, what can we do to try and feel like we're making a difference? Because this is terrifying and stressful and exhausting, but neither of us are the kind of people who have the energy or the wherewithal or the resources to go to protests and constantly call our representatives or donate money or the things that are like more activism, for lack of a better term. And so we were brainstorming and eventually kind of came across the idea of, well, we've already been writing these role plays together, these text-based role plays just for fun. What if we take those and we polish them up, add some more activism to them? I make that sound like really raw. We're beating you over the head with the activism. I promise we're not. Make it more intentional and more coherent, and then we put it out in the world. And it's kind of our response to seeing everything kind of going wrong, in our opinion, and offering a little bit of hope, a little bit of something different, a little bit of, hey, other marginalized folks, you're not alone, and here's how we can help you, because we're both storytellers and we're both wordsmiths. We're not out in the street fighting. So we're doing more behind the scenes fighting through these books. That's kind of the long, rambly version of how it came to be.
Yes, do you want to give us just a little bit of a synopsis for Aces High Joker's Wild?
I guess I probably should, shouldn't I? So it is a queer, hopeful cyberpunk. It's set about 100, 150 years in the future. And the world is obviously ravaged by climate change, etc., which we're already seeing. And America has been taken over by 7 corporations who have taken over the government, created all sorts of human rights violations. We promise we didn't mean this to be prophetic. And the series itself follows this group of rebels who are fighting to bring democracy and human decency back to America. And there's a lot of found family and a lot of exploration of mental health issues and being marginalized and how we can build a better world in this sci-fi futuristic setting inspired by the world today.
Okay. And your main character, his name is Aiden Headley. Could you tell us a little bit about him?
Aiden is a trans guy. He is a young commander for this crack team of fighters who have fallen out of line and keep playing pranks on people instead of getting their job done. And Aiden also deals with depression and anxiety, and he has to figure out how to become a leader and how to help this other team while also dealing with everything going on in his own head. And he's actually very inspired by some of my own experiences with gender struggles and mental health, and I hope that he can be kind of an inspiration for other people who struggle with those things, in that those things don't have to define you. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have I believe you published 7 books and there's an 8th one on the way. Is that right?
There's an 8th coming out this summer.
Okay. Is the 8th going to be the final one, or are you going beyond that?
The 8th is the final one in this series, and we are planning a trio of young adult books set a couple years afterward.
Okay, cool.
Yes, that's a quartet now.
Yes, I was checking out some of the reviews for the first book on Amazon. It has a lot of great reviews on it, and one thing that I noticed was there are quite a few reviews that start off with something along the lines of, this isn't something I would normally read.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I'd like this. And then it goes on to talk about how much they enjoyed it, how great it was. So talk a little bit about maybe your expectations upon releasing the first book and your reaction to how it's been received so far.
To be entirely honest, I have been very pleasantly surprised by how well it was received. Because, I mean, as mentioned previously, I have anxiety. And so anything that seems like it might be remotely, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial, that's the word. Such as having a trans protagonist, having explicit queer sex scenes on the page, dealing with political overt themes, all of these things that our books do. The minute it went live, I was immediately expecting a backlash of, people hate reading it and saying, this is awful because it's queer and progressive and highly political, etc. And to not only not have that, but to have the exact opposite of that in a lot of the reviews has been amazing. My favorites, I think, are when we're at conventions and things and we have people come up and tell us, hey, I'm trans, or I have a friend or a family member who's trans, and these books have been an incredibly meaningful thing for me to see myself on the page and to see that I can be a hero and that these things don't define me. That's been absolutely humbling and amazing, and I'm so glad that we can offer that to people.
Yeah, the world is made up of all kinds of different people, and it's important that everyone has uh, characters that they can relate to in a book and look up to. When you and Olivia were planning this book, was the goal always to have a trans protagonist?
It just kind of happened by accident, in that I was writing one when we were doing the role plays initially, and because I was kind of working through gender stuff on my own, and so it was if I explore this through our writing together, maybe it'll help me figure it out in my own head. Spoiler, it didn't. But Aiden came about that way, and it just felt right to keep him that way, because it was a huge part of his character arc and his character development. And we're both marginalized in our own ways. And so it is important to us to have as much representation as possible in our books. We've got trans characters, straight characters, gay characters, characters of all different races and different economic backgrounds, different religions. We've got disabled characters. We have all as much representation as we can, because that exists in the world, and like you said everyone deserves to be able to see themselves, and representation is important. And we have this platform in these books where we can say, everyone is important. And for us, at least, we wouldn't be doing our jobs as authors if we didn't include that.
Yeah. And yes, earlier you mentioned the S word, sex. Uh, is this um is this recommended for age 18 and over then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Just legally.
um so the series it's 8 books long. I'm just curious, like from the very beginning, did you plan it out that way, or did just things take on a life of its own, and you kept just expanding on the world that you were building?
A little bit of both. We had actually role played the entire story arc together before we decided to publish at all. And so we kind of knew the general arc, for lack of a better term, of the story. We knew where we were starting, we knew where we were ending, and we knew kind of how we were getting there. The actual 8 books was, we were looking at, I think we were originally trying to do 5 or something smaller, and then we realized we can't do the story and the characters justice in that amount of time, so we need to write some more and break things up a little bit more and give the story a little bit more room to breathe. And so it was kind of a balance between planning everything out and, as we writers say, going by the seat of our pants, or pantsing it. And I think it did turn out really well, but there was definitely some tension between us for a while of trying to figure out what needed to go in which book and how many books we were going to wind up with at the end.
How does the process work as far as having two authors? Like, does one of you work on certain scenes and the other one works on a different kind of scene, or like how does that work?
Um, it's different for each co-writing pair. For us, um, what we did is we had the entire story laid out, and so Olivia actually went and wrote the rough draft for each book, and then she sent it to me, and I made edits and tweaks and suggestions and pointed out, we need more character development here and less science, because I tend to be much more character arc and story driven, and she is much more, I need to make sure the science is correct in this, and I need to make sure the world building makes sense and all of that, so we balance each other really well on that front. And so once I was done with making sure that it was still it was a compelling story and making all of my edits, she would go back and edit based on that, send it to me again, and then we would send it to our editor, and then it would go to beta readers and sensitivity readers, and then back to our editor. We would do any other edits we needed to do, and then it was good. So a lot of emailing things back and forth.
Do you have a favorite character in the book?
For me, definitely Aiden. He's my baby. I mean, like I said, he kind of came out of me struggling with my own things, and so he will always be kind of my favorite, close to my heart. Beyond Aiden, I'm actually also really fond of his sister Naomi, who doesn't really show up until I think book 3. They all kind of mush together eventually. But she winds up being the explosive expert on base, and she is sassy and takes names and chews gum. She's all out of gum. she's just so sassy and badass, and I love her.
Okay, I like her already. You mentioned that the 8th book will be the last book. Do you have a release date for that yet?
We're hoping for July 4th this year.
Okay.
We'll see how everything goes. Fingers crossed. If not, it'll be a little bit later in the summer.
Okay. I see that there was a comparison to Aces High Joker's Wild where it was called similar to like the
Firefly of the dystopian genre.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say that's accurate? I mean, how do you feel about that comparison?
It's very flattering. I like to think it's accurate because it's definitely, small group of found family rebels out there doing what they can to try and make a difference while also saving their own skins. And a lot of that interpersonal dynamic exploration of, you've got these very different personalities all smushed together in a small space working towards a common goal. So yeah, I like to think that it's similar. And if we can hit cult status like Firefly did, that would be amazing.
Yeah. As far as the sci-fi elements of the story go, like what are we talking here? Are they like alien races or that kind of thing?
The sci-fi is much more
science-based. Okay.
So it's more technology, and we're talking things like we call them hollow tarps, which is basically invisibility cloth that reflects light wavelengths different, and it's a lot of extrapolating on things that either already exist or are already being discussed within science communities. And so we don't really have aliens, but we do have, holograms and um, industrial 3D printing and genetic modification and um, more of the like nitty gritty, down to earth sci-fi elements, if that makes sense.
Okay. Uh, did you have any other media that influenced you on this or inspired you?
Yes, but my brain is drawing a blank.
Was Firefly one of them?
Firefly was one of
Okay,
them. I feel like there's some elements of Fifth Element in there a little bit. Um,
it's a great
Obviously
movie.
not the aliens and things, but that kind of aesthetic. There's a little bit of Farscape in it. If you've seen Farscape,
I have not.
um, honestly, Liv would be a lot better at answering this question
Okay,
than I would
well,
because everything just becomes a big melting pot in my brain, and it's hard to
right.
like pick out the specific influences.
Yeah, I understand. Well, how about as far as um, books that you enjoy reading? Like, what are some of your favorites that you like to read? Or your favorite
I
authors?
am a fantasy person. My top three favorite authors are Tamara Pierce, Neil Gaiman, and Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
And if I could be as funny as Terry Pratchett, I would be so happy. But I don't think anyone can be as funny as Sir Terry Pratchett.
I've honestly never read a Terry Pratchett book.
Oh, you're missing out. They're so good.
Uh, I've read I have read Neil Gaiman though. He definitely has some fun works that he has. Uh,
He's so good at manipulating language and creating these beautiful sentences that
yeah,
are just
I really enjoy. I think it's just called the Graveyard Book.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite book of his that I've read. Um, Definitely very fun.
Yeah,
How
Graveyard
about
Book is
movies? Did you draw any inspiration from movies? Okay.
um
Okay, we can skip that.
yeah, like I mean I can give you my favorite movies, but they'll
Yeah, well, sure.
definitely not
I'd love
make
to hear your favorite
the
movies.
book. Like How to Train Your Dragon did not make it into the book. Um we do have a reference to Good Omens, the TV show,
Okay.
at one point.
Well, yes. Do you want to talk a little bit about some authors have like specific writing rituals. Do you have anything like that? Okay, just whenever you find the time, wherever, you just go ahead and write.
Whenever my brain is in a decent place, it's I pull up the word processor or open the notebook, and it's just scribbling down as much as I can before my brain shuts off again.
Okay,
Um,
so you don't have like a target for like a daily word count or anything like that.
no, I tried that for a while and it stressed me out personally more than was helpful. Um, and like I've done National Novel Writing Month or NaNoWriMo a couple times, and for me personally, I've never gotten anything even worth salvaging out of it. And so it just seemed like a lot of stress for not a lot of benefit. So I'm definitely a fits and bursts type of writer.
Okay. And were you always interested in writing, or did that happen later on in life?
For Olivia, it happened later on, more or less when she met me, and I dragged her into it. Um, I started writing in 8th grade, middle school, um, because I wanted to take Tamara Pierce and Lord of the Rings, and Tamara Pierce, Lord of the Rings, Aragon, and Harry Potter, and write like my own thing inspired by all of those, which, it was a 12th grade or 8th grade. I was 12. It did not turn out well, but it started me on the road to. I like telling stories. I like creating worlds. I like exploring different characters. And here we are now.
What was the first thing that you published?
The very first thing I published was a urban fantasy short story in an anthology called Crossing Colfax, which was through the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers organization. And my short story was a kitsune, which is a Japanese fox spirit trickster who worked with this organization of other mythical creatures to keep magic from wreaking havoc on the normal human world. And she had to go track down a sphinx in Denver and throw it back into the fairy world before it started creating havoc. And that was my very first short story, and it is still available if you would like to read it.
Well, that sounds like
It's
fun.
not romantic at all, but it is fun.
Where can that be found?
That can be found on Amazon. It's actually under, I think it's under Emily K. Singer. It's called Colfax Kitsune.
Okay.
Or you can search for the anthology itself of Crossing Colfax.
Okay, cool. With Aces High, Joker's Wild, do you have any plans to expand it? Like you mentioned that it started out like with you and Olivia doing role plays. What about like a tabletop role playing game set in that universe?
We've thought about it. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of things that neither of us really have a skill set in yet. But I think it is something we'd like to do eventually. Just want to finish the series first and then kind of figure out how that would work.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
personally also would love to see it as a graphic novel.
I was just gonna say maybe a graphic novel adaptation. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Any plans to do like a spin-off series for any of the characters?
Not at the moment. Like I said, we've got a young adult series we're going to do afterwards that follows kind of the next generation. So the kids that are all growing up during this series, it'll be their stories. Like Liv likes to say, this series is tearing down the old, and the next series is going to be building the new.
Okay.
So this 8 books is okay. Well, we have to take down these corporations, and we have to destroy all the bad, so that we can start something new. But a lot of things just kind of end with, "Yay, the bad guy's taken down," and that's not really how life works. Life still happens after that. And since part of the reason we're doing this is to provide hope and to say, okay, how are we going to get out of this mess that we've created as a society? We want to be able to show there is a road to do that. And so that's what the next trio or quartet is going to be, is the kids helping to build the new thing from the ashes of the old.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you actually answered my next question too. I was going to ask if hope was one of the big themes for the series, because it kind of sounds like it has a um, more positive spin on it, I guess you'd say.
It does, yeah.
It's not like a dark and dreary series or anything like that.
No, I mean it definitely has its dark moments,
Right.
because like you can't tell a story without conflict and without dark
Right.
moments. And B, it is kind of our psychological response and our catharsis of, we're living in this dark reality. How do we fix it? So hope is definitely one of the core themes. Hope and community and taking care of each other.
And were you'd kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but how much inspiration did you take from real world events that are going on?
A lot, but also like some of it was intentional and some of it wasn't. So, for example, book, I think it was 5, deals with a bioweapon that the Corps have put out that manifests in what's basically a pandemic. We wrote this in 2016, 2017, and it came out 2020. And we're like, okay, well, not that we think COVID was, an intentional bioweapon, but we're writing a pandemic that's coming out in a pandemic. And then there are things like the world got to where it is in the story because of a series of really long problematic government shutdowns, which we're kind of seeing. So there was a lot of, oh my gosh, everything's exploding. But also kind of, we don't want to take this word for word from real life. And obviously we couldn't see a pandemic coming. It just kind of happened somehow.
Was there ever any talk of delaying the release of the first book because of the pandemic?
I mean, we did consider it, but we were trying to do a book a year, basically, for a while, and we had everything already set up to go live at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was different enough that we could say, okay, well, it's still kind of a weird thing to think about, honestly. But here we are.
So you had mentioned that you had taken some of your own life experience and incorporated that into Aiden's character. Can you talk a little bit about what you do to take care of your own mental health?
Yeah, I am in therapy. I see my therapist every other week, and that has been a huge help. I, after quite a long time of fighting myself and saying, no, I don't need it, I got on medication, which has been an incredible help. Hi, I bother my cats, one of whom is looking at me like, hello, yes. I am a mental health aide. I know you are. I do actually have them both as emotional support animals right now. I make sure that I have enough time to myself because I need to be able to decompress. I write cathartic things like Aiden dealing with his own issues and having the community and the support of people who love him. And I'm really bad at this, but I'm trying to get better of reaching out to my own support network of, hey, I need some help right now. I'm feeling really down or whatever. Yeah, it's hard, but it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that writing this series has been somewhat therapeutic for you?
100%. Yeah. Because it was a lot of, I see myself in Aiden and he's succeeding and he's doing these awesome things. B, taking out my anger at the world in a healthy way. And then also exploring different coping mechanisms through the writing and through the story of, Aiden has a holographic therapist AI that he uses, and how can I use those types of conversations that we wrote in my own experience. Has just made me think about things differently and been super helpful. I like exploring things in fiction before trying to utilize them in my own life.
In the real world, there's, I think we're making progress in this, but there's always been kind of a bit of a stigma around mental health issues. Um, does that also exist in the book series?
Not as much. Aiden has it because he's in command, and it's more an internalized thing of, I'm in command, I shouldn't have these issues, I have to get over it to, keep my people safe. But as far as a society on the rebel basis, it's definitely more of a, hey, mental health is important. Let's sit down and discuss your issues, and here's our base therapist. And it's much more of a, we're going to not quite shine a spotlight on it, but make sure that it's taken care of. Make sure that it's talked about and not hidden in the shadows. Because the stigma is harmful. It's really bad.
Yeah. Do you feel that things are improving in our own world?
I think they are, slowly but surely. Hopefully it continues that way. But there are still issues of, anytime there's a mass shooting or serial killer or something, it's immediately they were mentally ill, not, they were angry, and so there's still kind of that stigma of mentally ill equals violent, equals broken, equals not worthy of something, of care or support or safety. And when we can really start getting away from that in news reporting and in just kind of societal thinking, I think that'll be a really big step.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, going back to this quartet of young adult novels that you have coming out, have you already started writing that? Do you have a planned release date?
We do not yet.
Okay.
We're probably going to take at least a year off between series to give us some space to plan and design, all that good stuff. So we're probably looking at 2026. I just said probably too many times in that sentence. 2026 at an earliest, probably later. But we're going to finish this series first, take a breather, and then get started.
Yeah, after doing a book a year for the last 8 years, I'd say you definitely deserve a break.
Yeah, it's been a little bit intense.
Have you and Olivia talked about anything beyond that?
Not yet. That's not to say that we won't, but I think we might do that and then just see how things go, and then work on our own individual stuff for a while. We're just gonna have to see at this point.
Okay.
We're very
Fair
much
enough.
just, okay, we're almost done with this series.
Yes.
Finish this
Yeah,
series.
one thing at a time.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, is there anything else that I haven't mentioned about Aces High Joker's Wild that you'd like to throw in there?
It's available anywhere you want to buy books. We've got print versions, ebooks, and audiobooks. Amazon, indie stores, wherever you can find all of it at OE Tearmann, TEARMANN.com. If readers have any thoughts or want to reach out, we'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, thanks for having me on to chat. I appreciate it.
So I just have to ask: did you and Olivia, did you perform yourselves for the audio version?
No.
Okay.
No, we got a professional audiobook reader. His name is Kurt. He actually did the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger. and it was kind of uh, a moonshot of, hey, we really like your work. Would you be interested in reading ours? And he miraculously said yes, and he's freaking amazing.
Very cool. And you mentioned the website's oetearmann.com. Do either you or Olivia have any social media accounts where you like to interact with people?
Yeah, you can find all of that on the website. We mostly do Facebook and Twitter because we're old. Um, but we've also got our email and anything else, so feel free to drop us a line anywhere you'd like.
Okay. I'll be sure to include some links in the description of this episode so people can find you. And
Sure.
yes, Argentum, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to everybody listening. If you want to learn more about my podcast, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for A Happy Moment. And I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.